Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. Here's the situation. I'm lonely, I live with my parents, I have no job, and it will be my 30th birthday in less than a month. Let's talk about it. Let me share a little bit about my story. So, if you've never been to this channel before, welcome. My name is Max, my pronouns are they, them, and I love making videos. I'm also an autistic ADHDer, and that majorly affects my life. It is a disability and it disables me. 2023 was a really difficult year for me. Well, it had its ups and downs, but the downs were quite significant. I went through a significant breakup. I moved back in with my parents because I couldn't afford to live anywhere else. And those two things were really difficult for me to transition into, especially being autistic and transitions just being generally difficult for me anyway. I closed the blind a bit more because the light was annoying me. Another thing that really affects me in my life and really affects how I feel about myself and the stories that I tell myself is the fact that in the last 8 or so years of my life since leaving university, I've had 2 very short-term jobs. And it's one of the things that really gets me down, that I can't hold down a job. But as an autistic person, the job market is incredibly inaccessible to me. And there are lots of things about work that mean that I can't do it. And it's taken me a really long time to accept that, to the point where I actually spent years trying and trying and trying lots of different things and different ways to be able to work for myself from home, and none of it ever seemed to work. But the significant thing was that I developed this really unhealthy association with productivity. I developed this really unhealthy work ethic where I would just work and work and work and run myself into the ground, basically. I know that for me, autism makes it really hard for me to be connected with how I feel in the present moment and what my energy levels are like in the present moment. And so it's meant that I don't usually realise when I'm doing too much until it's too late and I have already done too much. So I'm really trying at the moment to transform that pattern. I've spent a lot of my 20s associating my worth with how much I can get done in a day. And I've also spent a lot of my 20s not fully accepting my limits. I wasn't diagnosed autistic until 2 years ago. Oh no, less than that even, like a year and a half ago. And it hasn't been until very, very recently that I've started to acknowledge how much internalised ableism I carry. There's been so much underlying story in my mind throughout my life of, oh, if I can just do this, then I can prove that I'm good enough. Or if I can complete this in this length of time, in this period of time, then I can prove that I can do things and that I'm capable. And it drove me into autistic burnout, definitely. I think we have all these expectations of ourselves because of societal expectations that at a certain point in our lives we will have done certain things, or we will be in a certain place, or we will have achieved certain things, or our life will look a certain way. And I think that we forget a lot of the time as millennials, or whatever stage of life you're at really, that generations before us have had things a lot differently. Certain things have been a lot more accessible, certain things have been structured in a way in society that means that more people have been able to get to that point. I feel a lot like that when I think about housing for the younger generations of today, and when I think about the job market too. And I think it can be really easy to absorb those stories from society and feel like, oh well, I'm not good enough because I haven't got there yet, or I'm not good enough because I don't have my own place, or I'm not good enough because I'm not in the career that I want to be in. And I do really feel like, as a disabled person, I'm autistic and have ADHD, it hits harder because as much as over time these things have become less accessible, they've become even less accessible to disabled people. There's been a lot of really cool discourse in recent years around hustle culture and around people starting to reject that, which I think is awesome. And also how slow living has become more of a popular concept and people have started adapting their lives a little bit more to suit how they actually need to live, which I think shows that we're heading in the right direction with these things. I feel like as millennials, and I speak to millennials because we're at that general stage of life where older generations are kind of judging us, not always, but I do come across that quite often where I feel judged by older generations for not having a job, even though I have a disability that stops me from being able to get a job, and judged for still living with my parents. And I'm sure there's lots of things about how older generations lived that we won't understand. But I do feel like what I don't often come across is older generations understanding that they might not understand our generation. It quite often feels like there's an expectation that we can do things in the same way that they did, or be able to achieve the same things they did at our age, and that's just not the case. I feel like disability is kind of a side note from this because there's so much in the societal structure nowadays that means that it's so much harder to get a job, and it's so much harder to own your own home. It's so much harder even to get a rental. It's ridiculously hard to get a rental right now. And I feel like there's so many people going through these difficulties and having trouble with this type of life stuff, especially people my age, but we don't talk about it, or at least I haven't really heard anyone talking about it. I've seen a few YouTube videos actually where people are starting to open up a bit about the experiences that they're having in their life, and that's what really inspired me to make this video and to share where I'm at and my story, because that content has really impacted me. The reality is that the systems that are in place in society right now are not in place to serve us. They are in place to serve people who have a lot more money than us and who have access to a lot more than we do. And I think it's important to put the focus there rather than put the focus on our individual selves, because it makes us feel like we can't do stuff, or it makes us feel like we're not as good as other people, or it makes us feel like we're not worthy. Sometimes I think about societal structures and I think like if systems were actually in place to help people rather than to help the 1%, then there would be a lot more support out there for autistic adults, because I don't know about other autistic folks, but for me, this type of life stuff, like housing and money and jobs and all of that, like adulting type of stuff, is some of the hardest things for me to do. I find it incredibly difficult, incredibly inaccessible, incredibly overwhelming, and that's the type of stuff that I 100% need so much support with. And it's totally a huge part of the reason why I'm living with my parents right now. I feel like when you think about the millennial generation this way, and when you think about how society is structured, it makes absolutely no sense that there should be shame around people living with their parents. It makes absolutely no sense that there should be shame about people not being in work. Oh, there's such a big fluffy dog outside. Oh my gosh, he's like a lion. Wow, he's amazing. Oh, I love dogs. I just really felt like I wanted to speak on this channel because I've felt so much shame and I've felt so much unworthiness in association with all this stuff. And I really want this YouTube channel to be a place where other people who go through similar things to me, or maybe even not, can feel validated. These particular things about adult life are an extreme amount harder than they used to be, and I feel like we need to hold that in our knowledge a lot more, especially when we're questioned by older generations. I mean, there's so much statistics nowadays around how many of the younger generations can afford their own homes versus when the older generations were our age. It's crazy. So if you're going through anything similarly to what I've just been talking about, please know you're not alone. Let me know below if this has resonated with you, because I really hope to reach some people who feel like this message came to them at the right time and know that not being able to do these things and not being able to access these things and it taking a very long time to be able to get to where you want to be isn't about you. It's not about you, it's about the system. Remember that you are a beautiful, inherently worthy human being, and your life is about more than the tick list of what you've achieved. If you'd like me to make another video about any of this type of stuff, please let me know in the comments below. I love you. See you in the next video. Bye!